Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into a world flickering with the light of furnace fires and smelling faintly of sulfur and strange herbs. You are standing in a cluttered laboratory, somewhere in the heart of 16th century Europe. Vials of brightly colored liquids line the shelves, catching the dim light like captured jewels. Strange charts depicting the stars and human anatomy cover the walls. And in the center of it all is an athanor, the alchemical furnace, humming with a low, constant heat that warms your face. You're about to embark on a journey, not just through geography, but through the very fabric of reality as it was understood. A journey into the mind of a man who was equal parts genius and madman, a doctor who would poison you to save you. And let's be honest, in his time and with his methods, you probably wouldn't survive this. He was a force of nature, a tempest in human form, and tonight you are him. So before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you truly enjoy what we're redoing here. We love to see where our stories are reaching. So feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see our community of night owls spanning the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a soft humming background noise, and let's settle into tonight's journey together. The first breath you take is crisp, thin, and tastes of pine. It's the year 1493, and you've just been born in the shadow of the Swiss Alps, in a small town called Enzidel. Your given name isn't the one history will remember you by. For now, you are Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. It's a mouthful, a name that sounds like it comes with its own coat of arms, and a small, indebted principality. Your friends, if you had any, would probably just call you Theo, but friendship isn't a currency you'll ever trade in. Your father, Wilhelm, is a physician, a man of science and books, but not the kind of dusty, dogmatic science you will grow to despise. He is also a chemist, and your earliest memories are not of toys, but of the strange and wonderful apparatus in his small laboratory. He teaches you the names of plants, the properties of minerals, and the quiet, watchful patience required to observe nature. Your mother's story is a whisper, a space in the historical record. Historians still debate the circumstances of her life and early death. Some say she was a bondswoman, others that she suffered from a mental illness, a deep melancholy that eventually consumed her. Whatever the truth, her absence is a formative presence in your young life, perhaps the first great mystery you feel compelled, yet unable, to solve. You are left with your father, a solitary boy in a world of towering peaks and deep, dark valleys. Your town is near a major mining center, and this becomes your second classroom. While other children play, you are watching the miners, these gnarled, hardened men who burrow into the earth to pull forth its treasures. You see the lead, the copper, the zinc, the silver. You also see the toll it takes on them, the lung diseases, the strange tremors, the way the metals seem to seep into their very bones. You are learning your first, most important lesson. The world is a vast, living body, and the things that can heal can also harm. It all depends on the dose. This is a concept that will become the bedrock of your entire philosophy, the core of your revolution. The idea that poison is in everything, and no thing is without poison. Only the dose makes a thing not a poison. It's a profound insight for a boy who spends his afternoons poking at rocks, a philosophy that will one day give birth to the entire field of toxicology. You don't just see the rocks and the sick miners, though. You see the whole system. The way the water flows down the mountain, carrying dissolved minerals with it. The way certain plants only grow in soil rich with specific ores. You are learning to read the signatures of nature, the idea that God has imprinted clues onto everything, telling you its purpose. It's a common belief in this era, the tail end of the Middle Ages bleeding into the fresh wounds of the Renaissance. All around you, the world is churning. Columbus has just sailed the ocean blue. The printing press is spreading ideas like wildfire. and the old certainties of the Church and the ancient Greeks are beginning to crack. But for you, here in your mountain home, the world is simpler and more profound. It is a book written by a divine hand, and you are learning its language. Your father encourages this. He is not a man to accept the word of Galen, the long-dead Greek physician, whose texts are treated as gospel without question. He teaches you to trust your own eyes, your own experiments. This is the true inheritance he gives you. Not a name, not a title, but a spirit of radical empiricism. A healthy dose of "I'll believe it when I see it," which is a dangerous attitude to have in an age of faith. You learn about metallurgy, and you learn about botany. You learn about the simple folk remedies of the local healers. The kind of knowledge the university-trained doctors in their velvet robes would dismiss as peasant superstition. But you see that sometimes they work. You're building a strange and eclectic foundation of knowledge, a tapestry woven from high science and low folklore, from the celestial and the subterranean. It's a messy, contradictory, and deeply personal education. It's the perfect start for a man who will spend his life at war with the establishment. You don't know it yet, but you are not just a boy. You are a bomb waiting to go off. And your long, rambling, and very loud fuse has just been lit. The chill of the mountains eventually gives way to the clammy, crowded air of university towns. Your father sends you away to study, and you become a wanderer, a perpetual student, drifting from one institution to another. You appear in the records of the University of Basel, then Vienna, and later, it is believed, in Ferrara, Italy. You are searching for knowledge, but you find only dogma. The lecture halls are cavernous and cold, smelling of old paper and unwashed scholars. The professors, draped in academic robes, drone on in Latin, reciting the works of Galen and Avicenna as if they were holy scripture. To question them is heresy. To suggest they might have been wrong about the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile governing all health is to invite ridicule and scorn. You sit on a hard wooden bench, the scratch of your neighbor's quill, a constant irritating whisper. You are supposed to be learning the art of medicine, but it feels more like an exercise in memorization. You are told that disease is an imbalance of these humors, and the cure is to rebalance them, usually by bleeding the patient, or purging them, or making them sweat. It seems crude, simplistic. It doesn't match what you saw in the mines, what your father taught you. Where do the metals fit into this? Where do the specific properties of plants fit? It feels like trying to fix a complex clock with nothing but a hammer. You raise your hand one day, your voice, rough from the mountain air, cutting through the monotonous Latin. You ask a question, a practical question. You ask how Galen's theory accounts for the specific sickness of a silver miner, which is different from that of a lead miner. The professor stares at you, his face a mask of indignation. He dismisses your question as irrelevant, the ramblings of a boy who has spent too much time with peasants and not enough with books. He tells you that all knowledge worth having is in the texts. The world outside the library is a distraction. This is the moment your disillusionment crystallizes. You look at these men, these celebrated doctors and professors, and you see them not as healers, but as librarians of old, dead ideas. They are polishing the bones of a skeleton, while the living patient dies in the next room. You realize you will learn nothing of value here. The real university, you decide, is the world itself. The real teachers are the peasants, the barbers, the executioners, the midwives, the gypsies, and the alchemists. They have the practical knowledge, the experientia, that the academics lack. So you leave. You pack your few belongings and walk out of the university gates, turning your back on the promise of a respectable degree and a comfortable life. You choose the road. This decision marks the beginning of your long years of wandering. Historians still debate the full extent of his travels during this period, as the records are sparse and often contradictory, pieced together from later writings and local archives. You walk through Germany, France, Italy, Spain, maybe even to England and Scandinavia. Some tales even have you traveling as far as Egypt and Constantinople, though that might just be you embellishing your own legend later on. It's like the 16th century version of a backpacking trip through Europe after dropping out of college, only with more plagues and fewer hostels. During these years, you don't just observe. You work. You serve as a military surgeon in the Venetian Wars, and this is where you truly learn your craft. On the battlefield, there's no time for theories of the four humors. There is only the brutal reality of the wound. You have to clean it, stitch it, and prevent it from festering. You learn more about the human body from a single cannonball injury than from a dozen textbooks. You experiment. You throw away the old methods of treating wounds, which often involved cauterizing with boiling oil or applying filthy concoctions that encouraged infection. It was a common historical fact of the era that more soldiers died from infection after the battle than from the wounds themselves during it. You, instead, pioneer the use of cleanliness. You insist on keeping wounds clean and letting them heal on their own. It's a revolutionary idea, a precursor to antisepsis that won't be fully understood for another 300 years. Your success rates are astonishing. You save legs that other surgeons would have amputated. You save lives that others would have abandoned. You also talk to everyone. You learn the secrets of the Italian alchemists, the folk remedies of the German herbalists, the strange poisons of the Spanish underworld. You collect knowledge like a bee collects pollen from every possible source, no matter how humble or how disreputable. An obscure fact from this period is your deep interest in the practice of sympathetic magic, the belief that an object that has been in contact with a person can still influence them from a distance. For wound treatment, this led to the weapon salve theory. Instead of treating the wound itself, you treat the weapon that caused it with a special ointment. While it sounds ridiculous to a modern ear, some scholars suggest it worked by a kind of placebo effect, or more practically, because it kept people from putting dirty poultices directly on the wound, allowing it to heal cleanly. It's a perfect example of your mind at work. Part sound observation, part wild esoteric theory. You are building an arsenal of ideas, a potent, volatile mixture of chemistry, medicine, folklore, and magic. You are no longer just Theophrastus. You are forging a new identity. You begin to call yourself Paracelsus beyond Celsus. It is an act of supreme arrogance, a declaration of war on the entire medical establishment. You are claiming to be superior to one of the most revered physicians of ancient Rome, and you are determined to prove it. Your wanderings eventually lead you back to civilization, or at least to a place with more cobblestones and fewer open sewers. It's 1527, and you arrive in the city of Basel, Switzerland. This isn't the Basel of your student days. You return not as a wide-eyed boy, but as a man with a reputation. Your name, Paracelsus, is whispered in taverns and surgical theaters. Stories of your miraculous cures on the battlefield have preceded you, and as luck would have it, the city is in need of a man just like you. The famous printer of the city, Johann Froben, a man whose presses churn out the revolutionary works of humanists like Erasmus, is suffering from a severe leg infection. The city's finest doctors have gathered, stroked their beards, consulted their ancient texts, and declared the situation hopeless. Amputation, they say, is the only answer. Erasmus himself, a friend of Froben, has heard of your prowess and recommends you. You are summoned to the great man's bedside. You walk into the room, a whirlwind of confidence and disdain. You are not a physically imposing man, often described as short and stocky, but you carry an aura of absolute authority. You take one look at Froben's leg, dismiss the other physicians with a wave of your hand, and get to work. You don't reach for a saw. You reach for your strange alchemical remedies. You administer carefully prepared metallic salts, things the other doctors would consider deadly poisons. It's a risky, audacious move. You are applying your core principle. The dose makes the poison. For days, the city holds its breath. Frobin's life hangs in the balance. And then, the miracle happens. The infection recedes. The leg is saved. Frobin makes a full recovery. Suddenly, you are the hero of Basel. Your fame explodes. The city council, in a flush of gratitude and awe, offers you the prestigious position of city physician and professor of medicine at the University of Basel. It's a staggering opportunity, a chance to finally implement your revolution from the inside. You accept, but you have no intention of playing by their rules. From your very first day, you are a walking, talking scandal. Your inaugural act as a professor is to deliver your lectures not in Latin, the sacred language of academia, but in German. This is an unheard of outrage. It's a common historical fact that Latin was the universal language of scholarship, and to lecture in the vernacular was seen as a vulgar pandering to the uneducated masses. For you, it is a statement of intent. You believe medicine should be accessible to everyone, not just the elite who have mastered a dead language. You want the local barbers, surgeons, and apothecaries to be able to understand you. Your lectures are unlike anything the university has ever seen. They are not dry recitations from Galen. They are fiery, passionate, and often insulting. You pace back and forth, your voice echoing in the hall, calling the ancient masters fools and their modern followers ignorant murderers. You bring in patients and diagnose them in front of the students, using your own observations rather than some predetermined chart of humors. You teach from your own experience, from the book of nature, not from the dusty tomes in the library. And then comes your most infamous act. On St. John's Day, in the summer of 1527, you build a bonfire in the university courtyard. As the students and faculty watch you take a copy of the Canon of Medicine by Avicenna, one of the most important medical textbooks in the world, a cornerstone of medical education for 500 years, and you throw it into the flames. As the pages curl and blacken, you declare that all it knows is how to lead a doctor to hell. You proclaim that the buckles on your shoes are more learned than Galen and Avicenna combined. It's an act of spectacular theatrical rebellion. It's the academic equivalent of nailing your own theses to the church door, but with more fire and brimstone. Your colleagues are apoplectic. The city's physicians and apothecaries, whose practices and profits you have openly attacked, form a powerful coalition against you. They see you as a charlatan, a dangerous madman who threatens the very foundations of their world. Historians still debate whether this public book burning was a calculated act of self-promotion or a genuine, uncontrollable outburst of iconoclastic fury. Perhaps it was both. You are making enemies at an astonishing rate. You also attempt to regulate the city's apothecaries, demanding they submit their recipes for your approval to prevent them from price gouging and selling ineffective or harmful remedies. This, of course, enrages them further. You are a one-man wrecking crew, tearing down a system that has stood for centuries. You are brilliant, you are effective, and you are completely, utterly impossible to work with. Your bedside manner is famously atrocious. You are arrogant, drunken, and quick to insult anyone who disagrees with you. An obscure fact, often cited by your detractors, was your habit of sleeping with your massive broadsword always by your side, a sword you nicknamed Azoth, which you claimed contained a secret elixir of life in its pommel. Whether it actually did, or was just a convenient flask, is another one of your mysteries. The triumph in Basel, it turns out, is to be short-lived. The forces you have provoked are gathering, and your time as the king of the city's medical world is rapidly coming to an end. Your reign in Basel crumbles almost as quickly as it began. The coalition of offended physicians, angry apothecaries, and scandalized academics proves to be too powerful. You've kicked the hornet's nest, and now the swarm is coming for you. The final straw is a dispute over a fee. You successfully treat a prominent church official, canon, for a serious illness, and you had agreed upon a handsome sum for your services. But upon his recovery, the canon, perhaps feeling his purse strings a little too tight, offers you a mere fraction of the agreed-upon price. You, never one to suffer a slight in silence, are enraged. You see it not just as a personal insult, but as an attack on the dignity of your profession as you define it. You sue him. This turns out to be a colossal miscalculation. The legal system, like the academic and medical systems, is part of the establishment you so despise. The court is filled with your enemies. They side with the canon, ruling against you. But it gets worse. Your enemies seize this opportunity to press their advantage. They bring forth a litany of charges against you, of malpractice, of public indecency, of blasphemy. They paint you as a heretic and a dangerous quack. You receive a tip from a friend that your arrest is imminent. You know you won't get a fair trial. In the dead of night, less than a year after your triumphant arrival, you flee Basel. You leave behind your prestigious post, your laboratory, and any semblance of a stable life. You are once again a wanderer, but this time you are also a fugitive. The next decade of your life is a blur of motion, a frantic journey across southern Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. You are constantly on the move, never staying in one place for too long, always looking over your shoulder. You are an exile, hounded from town to town by the powerful enemies you made. The name that once brought you fame now brings you suspicion. You are Paracelsus the miracle worker, but you are also Paracelsus the heretic, the book burner, the arrogant drunkard. Yet it is during this period of intense hardship and instability that you produce your most important and enduring work. It is as if the constant pressure and motion fuel your creativity, forcing you to distill your chaotic thoughts onto the page. You write furiously, obsessively, pouring out a torrent of treatises on medicine, philosophy, alchemy, and theology. You are a man without a laboratory, so you turn your mind into one. You refine your theories, articulate your cosmology, and lay down the foundations of a new kind of science. You write Paragranum, the 4 pillars of medicine, in which you argue that a true physician must be a master of 4 disciplines. Philosophy, to understand the nature of man and the world. Astronomy, to understand the celestial influences on health. Alchemy, to create the proper remedies. And virtue, to have the moral integrity to heal. You are essentially designing a curriculum for a university that doesn't exist, for students who haven't been born yet. A common historical fact is that the vast majority of your work was not published during your lifetime. You wrote constantly, but the controversy surrounding you made printers wary. Your manuscripts circulated in secret among your few loyal followers, passed from hand to hand like forbidden texts. It would be up to your disciples to collect and publish them after your death, securing your legacy. You live a hand-to-mouth existence. Sometimes you find a wealthy patron, a nobleman, or a bishop intrigued by your radical ideas, who will offer you shelter and a place to work for a few months. During these brief periods of stability, you set up makeshift labs, continuing your alchemical experiments. But your abrasive personality and uncompromising views inevitably lead to conflict. And soon you are on the road again. An obscure but telling detail from this period is your work on what you call diseases of the mind. In an age that attributed mental illness almost exclusively to demonic possession or humoral imbalance, you wrote about it with surprising nuance. In your work, on the diseases that deprive man of his reason, you described conditions that sound very much like modern concepts of hysteria, mania, and psychosis, and you argued they had natural, not supernatural, causes. You suggested they could be treated with a combination of kindness, specific remedies, and a healthy environment. It was a remarkably compassionate and forward-thinking view, completely at odds with your public persona as an irascible hothead. This period also sees the deepening of your mystical and theological ideas. You are not just a physician. You are a Christian philosopher, albeit a highly unorthodox one. You grapple with the nature of God, creation, and humanity's place in the cosmos. You see the universe as a divine alchemical process, with God as the supreme alchemist. You write about elemental spirits, gnomes of the earth, undines of the water, sylphs of the air, and salamanders of the fire. To a modern reader, it sounds like pure fantasy, the stuff of fairy tales. But for you, these are not metaphors. They are a real, tangible part of the natural world, beings that a true philosopher-physician must understand. Historians still debate whether you intended these writings as literal descriptions of a hidden reality or as allegorical explorations of the forces of nature and the human psyche. The answer, as with so much about you, is likely a complex and contradictory both. You are building a universe in your own image, a place where science and spirit are not in conflict, but are two sides of the same divine coin. And you are doing it all while on the run, with nothing but your sword, your pen, and the fire in your soul. As you wander through the German-speaking lands, a ghost haunting the edges of the Holy Roman Empire, your alchemical vision truly begins to coalesce. For you, alchemy is not the get-rich-quick scheme that many of its practitioners chase. It is not about transmuting lead into gold for material wealth. That, to you, is the work of charlatans and soot-scratchers, as you contemptuously call them. For you, alchemy is the key to everything. It is the art of transformation, of purification, of raising the base to the noble. And its highest and truest purpose is not to make gold, but to make medicine. You call this new, or rather ancient and true, application of alchemy spagyrics, from the Greek words for to separate and to combine. The process is central to your philosophy. A spagyrist does not simply grind up a plant and stuff it in a pill. That is crude, inefficient. You believe that every natural thing a plant, a mineral, is a compound, a mixture of a pure, essential medicinal virtue and a coarse, often toxic, material body. The job of the alchemist physician is to use the arts of the furnace distillation, calcination, sublimation, to separate the pure from the impure. You must break the substance down into its fundamental components, discard the dross, and then recombine the purified essences into a potent, targeted remedy. It is a beautiful, elegant theory. You imagine taking a poisonous herb like hellebore. A traditional doctor might use it cautiously, knowing it could kill. But you, the spagyrist, would alchemically separate its toxic body from its hidden arcanum, its secret healing power. You would then have a medicine that is pure, safe, and powerful beyond anything the Galenists could dream of. This is iatrochemistry, or chemical medicine, the school of thought you are single-handedly creating. Your laboratory, when you are lucky enough to have one, is a place of wonders. Forget the image of a sorcerer in a pointy hat. Your work is meticulous, painstaking, and often smelly. The central piece of equipment is the athanor, a self-feeding furnace designed to maintain a constant, gentle heat for weeks or even months at a time, mimicking the slow, creative warmth of nature. On it, you place your glass retorts, pelicans, and alembics, their strange, bird-like shapes designed for complex distillations. The air is thick with the smells of fermenting herbs, burning charcoal, and the sharp tongue of mineral acids, the oils of vitriol and sulfur, which you and other alchemists of the era are just learning to master. A common historical fact is that this period saw the discovery and refinement of powerful mineral acids, like sulfuric acid and nitric acid, which became essential tools for alchemists and later for chemists, allowing them to dissolve metals and minerals in ways never before possible. You believe that the microcosm of the human body is a direct reflection of the macrocosm of the universe. As above, so below. The planets and stars influence the organs of the body. The metals in the earth correspond to remedies for disease. Everything is connected by a web of sympathies and antipathies. This is why you believe so strongly in the doctrine of signatures, the idea that nature has labeled her own pharmacy. A plant with a heart-shaped leaf, like wood sorrel, must be good for the heart. The gnarled, jointed root of a plant might be a cure for arthritis. The yellow sap of celandine could treat jaundice. To your enemies, this is peasant superstition. To you, it is reading the divine language of God's creation. An obscure but fascinating application of your alchemical medicine was your creation of laudanum, a tincture of opium and alcohol. While opium had been used for millennia, your alcoholic tincture was far more stable, potent, and easily administered. You considered it a panacea, an elixir of life, and used it to treat a vast range of ailments, particularly pain. Your formulation would become one of the most widely used and abused medicines in history, a staple of the physician's bag for the next 300 years. But your alchemy goes deeper than just medicine. It is a spiritual path. The process of purifying a metal or a plant is a mirror for the process of purifying the human soul. As you heat lead in a crucible, skimming off the impurities to reveal the pure substance within, you are also symbolically burning away your own sins and base desires to reveal the divine spark within yourself. The great work, the creation of the philosopher's stone, is not just about a physical substance that can perfect metals. It is about achieving a state of spiritual perfection and unity with God. This dual nature of your work is what makes it so difficult for later generations to classify. Historians still debate whether your alchemical writings should be read as practical chemical recipes or as complex religious allegories. The truth is, you would not have recognized a difference between the two. For you, to practice alchemy was to pray with your hands. To transform matter was to participate in the ongoing work of divine creation. It was a holy art, the highest calling for a man of both faith and science. Your furnace is not just a piece of lab equipment, it is an altar. And the work you do there is nothing less than a sacred rite. Your understanding of the universe, the human body, and the nature of disease is built on a foundation that completely rejects the classical model. You look at the galenic system of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow, and black bile, and you laugh. It's too simple, too abstract. It doesn't explain the specificity of disease. Why does a miner's disease attack the lungs? Why does gout attack the joints? An imbalance of black bile is a meaningless answer to you. You need a system that is chemical, that is rooted in the tangible world of minerals and substances you know so well. So you propose your own holy trinity. The three philosophical principles that you believe constitute all of reality. You call them the Trier Prima: mercury, sulfur, and salt. Now, it's crucial to understand that when you speak of these three, you aren't just talking about the physical substances. You aren't suggesting that a human being is literally made of quicksilver, brimstone, and table salt. That would be like saying a cake is made of flavor, texture, and sweetness. These are principles, fundamental qualities that manifest in all things, both physical and spiritual. Let's break them down. Mercury, the spirit, is the principle of fluidity, volatility, and transcendence. It is the life force, the spirit, the animating essence of a thing. In a human, it is the mind, the consciousness, the part that connects you to the heavens. In a plant, it is the alcohol you can distill from it. In a metal, it is its liquidity and metallic sheen. Mercury is the part of a substance that is ethereal, that can fly away, that can carry a message. It's the spirit in spirits of wine. It's the moody, transformative element, the part of you that dreams and imagines. Sulfur, the soul, is the principle of inflammability, of character, of soul. It is the oily, combustible part of a substance that gives it its unique identity, its color, its smell, its individual nature. In a human, it is the soul, the personality, the passions, the desires. It's what makes you you. In a plant, it is its essential oil, the source of its fragrance and flavor. In a piece of wood, it is the part that burns and gives off heat and light. Sulfur is the bridge between the ethereal spirit, Mercury, and the fixed body, Salt. It is the personality, the fiery, expressive part of your being. Salt, the body, is the principle of solidity, stability, and corporeality. It is the solid, non-combustible body of a thing, the part that remains after burning. It is the physical vessel that contains the mercury and sulfur. In a human, it is the physical body, the bones, the flesh, the material substance. In a plant or a piece of wood, it is the ash that is left behind after it has been completely burned. Salt is the principle of form, of structure, of the earth. It's the anchor that keeps the spirit and soul from flying away. It's the boring, responsible parent of the alchemical family. For you, health is the proper balance and harmony of these three principles within the body. Disease, therefore, is not an imbalance of humors, but a separation or a dissonance among the tria prima. If the sulfur, soul passion, becomes too strong and burns out of control, you get a fever or an inflammation. If the mercury, spirit, mind, becomes detached or erratic, you get madness or delirium. If the salt body becomes corrupted or weak, the whole structure decays. This is a radical and, frankly, a much more intuitive model of disease. It is a chemical model. A common historical fact of the era is that the four classical elements earth, air, fire, and water were still the dominant way of understanding the material world. Your tria prima did not necessarily replace the four elements, but rather, you saw them as a deeper, more fundamental layer of reality that composed them. This framework allows you to diagnose and treat with a new specificity. A disease of sulfur needs a remedy that can pacify or correctly channel that fiery principle. A disease of mercury needs a medicine that can stabilize the spirit. A disease of salt needs something that can purify and strengthen the physical body. And where do you find these remedies? In the world around you, by using alchemy to separate the mercury, sulfur, and salt from plants and minerals. You would create a sulfuric medicine or a mercurial one. An obscure but vital part of this theory is the concept of the archeus, an internal alchemist located in the stomach, which is responsible for separating the nutritious parts of food, the pure tria prima, from the waste, the dross. When the archeus is weak or malfunctioning, disease occurs. Therefore, some of your medicines were designed not to cure the disease directly, but to strengthen the archeus so the body could heal itself. It's a surprisingly holistic and almost modern-sounding concept. Historians still debate whether you conceived of the tria prima as a rigid, literal system or as a flexible, poetic metaphor for understanding the complexities of life. Given your writing style, which is often rambling, contradictory, and mystical, it was likely a fluid concept in your own mind, shifting between a practical chemical guide and a profound spiritual allegory. It was a way of seeing the world that unified the physical and the metaphysical, the laboratory and the chapel. It was your grand unified theory of everything, a cosmic trinity that explained the stars in the heavens, the metals in the earth, and the soul of the man who sought to understand them both. Your radical worldview extends beyond just medicine and alchemy. It fundamentally redefines humanity's place in the cosmos. You believe that man is not just a creature living in the world. He is the world in miniature. You popularize and profoundly develop the ancient concept of the microcosm and the macrocosm. The universe, the macrocosm, is a great living organism. And you, a human being, a microcosm, are a perfect tiny replica of that universe. Everything that exists outside of you also exists within you. This isn't just a poetic fancy. It's a practical diagnostic tool. You declare, The human being is a small world, and the world is a large human being. The sun and moon in the sky correspond to the heart and brain in your body. The 7 known planets of the time sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn correspond to the 7 principal organs. The vast systems of rivers and streams that water the earth have their parallel in the arteries and veins that carry blood through your body. The earthquakes and volcanoes of the macrocosm are mirrored by the fevers and convulsions of the microcosm. To understand one is to understand the other. A physician, therefore, must also be an astronomer, or more accurately, an astrologer. He must understand how the movements of the celestial bodies, the great clockwork of the heavens, influence the delicate machinery of the human body. This is not the fatalistic astrology of the daily horoscope, where your destiny is written in the stars. Your version is more complex, more medical. You call it astronomia. You believe that each person is born under a specific celestial configuration that gives them their unique constitution, their strengths, and their weaknesses. But more importantly, you believe that the stars don't just influence. They can also cause disease. You theorize that a kind of poisonous vapor or astral miasma can emanate from the planets and stars, which, when inhaled or absorbed by a person, can cause specific illnesses. It's a way of explaining epidemics and diseases that seem to come from nowhere. A plague, in your view, might be caused by a malignant conjunction of Saturn and Mars, raining down an invisible, pestilential influence upon the earth. Remember that this is a time before germ theory. A common historical fact is that disease was often blamed on miasma, or bad air, rising from swamps and decaying matter. Your astral theory is a variation on this, but it elevates the source from a local swamp to the entire cosmos. It gives disease a grand, almost biblical scale. Your cosmology is also populated by a host of unseen beings, which you describe in detail in one of your most famous and strangest works. Asterisk, a book on nymphs, sylphs, pygmies, and salamanders. And on the other spirits, asterisk. You are not writing fairy tales. You are writing a natural history of what you consider to be real elemental beings. These are not angels or demons. They are creatures of nature, without immortal souls like humans, but rational and intelligent. Gnomes, or pygmies, are the spirits of the earth. They are the guardians of minerals and treasures, the master craftsmen who live within the mountains. Undines, or nymphs, are the spirits of water, beautiful, fluid beings who inhabit rivers, lakes, and springs. Sylphs are the spirits of the air, ethereal and swift, living in the winds and clouds. And salamanders are the spirits of fire, who live within flames and are the embodiment of that. Element. An obscure and particularly curious part of this theory is that you believe these beings could interact and even intermarry with humans. You argued that such a union would grant the elemental being a human soul, allowing them to achieve immortality. This wasn't just folklore for you. It was a serious theological and philosophical proposition. It was your way of filling in the gaps of creation, of populating the world with a richness and complexity that a purely physical science would miss. You saw these spirits as part of the book of nature, and understanding them was part of the physician's duty. A miner's lung disease might not just be from metal dust, but from an imbalance caused by offending the gnomes of the mountain. Sailor's madness might be the work of mischievous undines. Historians still debate the true purpose of these fantastical writings. Were they a genuine expression of your beliefs in a magical world? Were they a coded, allegorical language for describing natural forces, gravity as the pull of the gnomes, evaporation as the work of sylphs? Or were they a brilliant, creative synthesis of folklore, Neoplatonic philosophy, and Christian theology? An attempt to create a Christian kabbai that was both scientific and pious? The answer is likely all of the above. You did not see a firm line between the spiritual and the physical. For you, a gnome was as real as a lump of iron ore. They were just composed of a finer, more subtle matter. Your universe is a vibrant, crowded, and deeply enchanted place. It is a world where a star's light can carry sickness, where a river has a soul, and where the man who understands these connections holds the key to healing. You are not just mapping the human body. You are mapping its soul and its intricate, unbreakable connection to the whole of creation. Your most radical departure from traditional medicine lies in your conception of disease itself. You argue with characteristic force and clarity that disease is not an internal imbalance of humors. Disease is an external invader. It is a specific, ontological entity that enters the body from the outside and takes root, like a seed falling on fertile ground. You call these seeds of disease the ends. This is a revolutionary concept, a full-blown paradigm shift that anticipates the germ theory of Pasteur by more than 300 years. You believe that each disease is a distinct being with its own life cycle, its own nature, and its own characteristics. Gout is not just an excess of black bile. It is an ens of tartar that has invaded the body and is growing in the joints. The plague is not just bad air. It is a specific poisonous ens that travels from person to person. This means that each disease requires a specific cure. The one-size-fits-all approach of bleeding and purging is, to you, insane. You wouldn't use the same tool to fix a clock and plow a field. So why would you use the same treatment for a skin rash and a lung infection? You famously declared, "A man is not sick in his whole body, but in one of his members." Treatment must be targeted. It must be specific. To explain the origins of these disease entities, you develop a complex system you call the 5 entia, or the 5 spheres from which all illnesses arise. This is your grand theory of pathology. 1. Asterisk, 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 ENS astral, asterisk, 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 the astral sphere. This is disease that comes from the heavens, as we've seen. The stars and planets in their alignments can project influences or impressions onto the earth that cause sickness. This explains epidemics that seem to strike whole regions at once, like a cosmic weather pattern. 2. Asterisk, 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 ens veneni, asterisk, 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 the sphere of poison. This is disease caused by material poisons that are ingested or absorbed by the body. This is where your deep knowledge of toxicology, learned in the mines, comes to the fore. You understand that the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe can contain subtle poisons that build up over time. The archeus, your internal alchemist, is meant to separate the pure from the poisonous, but if it is overwhelmed, the ens veneni takes hold. 3. Ens natural, the natural sphere. This refers to diseases arising from a person's own innate constitution. It's the weakness or predisposition you are born with, your personal Bacillus heal. This explains why, in an epidemic, some people get sick and others remain healthy. Their ens natural makes them either susceptible or resistant. 4. Asterisk, 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 ens. Spiritual asterisk, 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 the spiritual sphere. This is disease that arises from the human spirit or mind. Intense emotions like anger, fear, or sadness can manifest as physical illness. You also include in this category diseases caused by the influence of other spirits, both good and evil. It's your acknowledgement that psychology and faith play a crucial role in health. 5. Ens Dei, the sphere of God. This is the ultimate sphere for diseases sent directly by God as a punishment, a trial, or a lesson. These are the illnesses that no earthly medicine can cure. They can only be overcome through prayer, repentance, and divine grace. It is your way of maintaining a theological framework, acknowledging that some things are beyond the physician's control. A common historical fact is that the concept of contagion was poorly understood. While people knew to avoid the sick during a plague, the mechanism of transmission was a mystery. Your theory of disease has a specific invading entity. That could be passed on was a major, if incomplete, step toward a modern understanding. You were describing the what long before science could. Explain the how. An obscure and fascinating aspect of your pathology is the concept of tartar. For you, tartar wasn't just the plaque on teeth. It was a universal principle of morbid concretion, a kind of metabolic waste product that could build up anywhere in the body, causing a huge range of diseases. You believed this tartar, a slimy, earthy deposit, was the root cause of everything from kidney stones and gouty arthritis to hardened arteries and cataracts. It was the physical manifestation of the ens veneni taking root. Your treatments for these tartaric diseases often involved powerful chemical solvents, alchemically prepared remedies designed to dissolve these pathological concretions. It was a chemical attack on a chemical problem. Historians still debate the precise relationship between your ens theory and the later germ theory. Did you somehow intuit the existence of microorganisms? Or was your language of seeds and invaders simply a powerful metaphor for a process you couldn't see? You certainly had no concept of bacteria or viruses. Yet your insistence that diseases were specific, external entities that required specific chemical cures was a radical break from the past and a crucial signpost pointing toward the future of medicine. You were drawing a new map of illness, one where the enemy had a name and a nature, and could, with the right alchemical weapon, be defeated. You shifted the blame for sickness from the patient's own imbalanced body to an external foe, turning the physician from a mere rebalancer into an active warrior against disease. The cornerstone of your entire medical and alchemical system can be summed up in a single, powerful sentence, a phrase that has echoed through the centuries and remains a fundamental principle of toxicology. All things are poison, and nothing is without poison. The dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison. Sola dosis facit venenum. This is your great truth, the discovery that underpins all of your therapeutic innovations. You see this principle everywhere in nature. Water is essential for life, but drink too much and you can die. The sun gives warmth and life, but too much exposure burns you. The same is true of medicine. You look at the physicians of your day with their simple herbal remedies, and you see fear. They are afraid to use the most powerful substances in nature's arsenal, the metals and minerals, because they know they can be deadly. Antimony, arsenic, mercury, lead. These are names that inspire terror. They are known poisons associated with assassination and agonizing death. But you, with your alchemical knowledge, see not just poison, but power. You understand that within these deadly substances lies the potential for the most potent cures, if only they can be tamed, purified, and administered in the correct, minuscule dose. It's like trying to tame a dragon. It's incredibly dangerous. But if you succeed, you have an ally of immense power. Your approach is twofold. First, as we've seen, is the spagyric process of separation and purification. You believe that the raw mineral from the earth contains both a toxic body and a healing essence, its arcanum. Through complex alchemical processes, calcination, sublimation, distillation, you aim to separate this essence from its poisonous shell. Your goal is to create metallic and mineral salts that are safe and effective. For example, you would never give a patient raw, liquid mercury, which was a common historical fact that it was used disastrously as a treatment for syphilis. Instead, you would prepare it through a long process of chemical reactions to create a compound like mercury chloride, which you could then administer in a carefully measured dose. You are pioneering chemotherapy, the use of powerful chemicals. To fight disease, the second part of your approach, is the dose itself. This is where you are a true artist and scientist. You are obsessed with precision. You understand that the difference between a cure and a poison is not just in the substance, but in the quantity. Too little, and it has no effect. Too much, and it kills the patient faster than the disease. You spend countless hours in your makeshift laboratories, experimenting with dosages, creating medicines of a consistent and predictable strength. This is a radical departure from the herbalism of the day, where the potency of a plant could vary wildly depending on where it was grown and when it was harvested. Your chemical remedies, you argue, are superior because they are standardized. An obscure but important innovation attributed to you is the use of chemical indicators for quality control. For example, you might use a specific color-changing reaction to ensure that a batch of your antimony preparation had reached the correct stage of purification. It's a rudimentary form of the quality control that is now standard in the pharmaceutical industry. Your favorite weapons in this chemical war on disease are the metallic salts. You develop an entire pharmacopoeia based on them. You use compounds of antimony as a powerful purgative and emetic to violently cleanse the body of its tartaric impurities. You use gold, prepared in a drinkable form called aurum potabile, as a cordial to strengthen the heart and fight melancholy. You use iron to treat what we would now call anemia, recognizing its connection to the blood. And most famously, you champion the use of mercury to treat the great scourge of your age, syphilis. The great pox was a terrifying, disfiguring, and often fatal disease that had been raging across Europe for decades. Your mercury-based treatments, while harsh and fraught with the risk of mercury poisoning, were often the only thing that offered any hope of a cure. Of course, your methods are incredibly dangerous. You are walking a razor's edge. Your critics, and there are many, accuse you of being a poisoner, of killing as many patients as you cure. And they are not always wrong. The side effects of your metallic remedies could be severe: violent vomiting, organ damage, neurological symptoms. You are essentially asking your patients to endure a controlled poisoning in order to kill the disease poison within them. Historians still debate the overall efficacy and safety of your treatments. While you undoubtedly had some spectacular successes, it's impossible to know your failure rate. Were you a brilliant proto-pharmacologist who understood dose-response relationships, or a reckless gambler who occasionally got lucky? The truth, as always with you, is probably a messy combination of both. But your core insight that poisons can be medicines was revolutionary. You forced the medical world to look at the dark, dangerous corners of the natural world not with fear, but with a new sense of possibility. You understood that to fight the great darkness of disease, sometimes you had to be willing to borrow a little of its fire. Despite your nomadic and often impoverished existence, your ideas begin to spread. You are a polarizing figure, but you are not without followers. A small, dedicated circle of students, physicians, and alchemists begins to form around you, drawn to the power and originality of your vision. They see in you not a heretic, but a prophet, the herald of a new medicine and a new science. They are the first Paracelsians, and it is through them that your intellectual fire will be kept alive. One of the most important of these disciples is a man named Johannes Aporinus. Aporinus is a respected scholar and printer in Basalt, the very city you fled in disgrace. He had served as your personal secretary during your brief and stormy tenure at the university. He witnessed your genius and your madness firsthand. He saw you cure the incurable, and he saw you alienate the powerful. After you flee, Aporinus remains in Basel and eventually becomes one of the most important printers of the 16th century. For years, he is torn. He holds a vast collection of your manuscripts, the chaotic, brilliant outpourings of your years in exile. He knows their value, but he also knows their danger. Publishing them would be a risky move, both professionally and theologically. This relationship highlights the central challenge of your legacy. You wrote a phenomenal amount, but published very little yourself. A common historical fact is that in the 16th century, an author's reputation and influence were heavily dependent on the printing press. Without it, ideas could only circulate slowly in manuscript form. Your legacy, therefore, is in the hands of others. Your followers take on the monumental task of collecting, editing, and publishing your vast and often disorganized writings. It's a process fraught with difficulty. Your manuscripts are a mess written in a unique and difficult German dialect filled with neologisms and often lacking any clear structure. Editing your work is an act of interpretation, and different editors would emphasize different aspects of your thought, some focusing on the medicine, others on the alchemy, and still others on the radical theology. The world of 16th century publishing is a bit like the Wild West. There is no copyright law as we know it. This leads to a flood of both authentic and fraudulent Paracelsian texts. After your death, your name becomes a brand, a stamp of esoteric authority. Unscrupulous printers and aspiring alchemists publish their own works under your name, hoping to cash in on your fame. This creates a huge headache for later scholars. The immense task of sorting the genuine Paracelsus from the pseudo-Paracelsus. Historians still debate the authenticity of certain texts attributed to you, particularly those dealing with prophecy and black magic. It's a testament to the power of your legend that people were not only willing to read your work, but also to write as you. An obscure but fascinating example of your influence is your impact on the Anabaptist movement. Anabaptists were a radical Protestant sect, persecuted by both Catholics and mainstream Protestants for their beliefs in adult baptism and the separation of church and state. Some Anabaptist communities were drawn to your spiritual and medical ideas. They saw in your rejection of established authority a parallel to their own religious rebellion. They admired your emphasis on inner revelation, the light of nature, over dry book learning, and your focus on a lived, practical Christianity. Some of your followers were themselves Anabaptists, and they saw your work as a kind of third way between the rigid dogma of Rome and Wittenberg. Your ideas about elemental spirits and a divinely animated nature resonated with their own mystical tendencies. It's a strange and unexpected alliance, the arrogant, wine-loving physician and the pious, ascetic radicals. But it shows how your ideas could take root in the most diverse and fertile soils. The spread of your ideas creates a deep schism in the medical world that will last for over a century. On one side are the traditional Galenists, who defend the ancient texts and their humoral theories. On the other side are the Paracelsians, the chemical physicians, who champion your mineral remedies and your alchemical worldview. The debate between them is fierce, playing out in universities, royal courts, and print shops across Europe. It's a war of ideas, with each side accusing the other of being ignorant murderers. The Galenists call you a poisoner and a charlatan. Your followers call them clyster-pipes and purging fools, mocking their reliance on enemas and bloodletting. This conflict, as heated and personal as it was, ultimately proved to be productive. It forced both sides to defend their positions, and in doing so, pushed medicine forward. It was the clash of your fiery, revolutionary ideas against the monolithic old guard that created the sparks of modern science. You didn't just gain followers. You created an opposition, and in doing so, you started a conversation that would change the world. Your endless wandering finally brings you to the city of Nuremberg in 1529. Here, for a brief, shining moment, it seems as though your fortunes might be turning. Nuremberg is a bustling center of trade, art, and intellectual life, a city more open to new ideas than conservative Basel. You arrive with a manuscript in hand, a work you believe will vindicate you and silence your critics. It is a treatise on the French disease, your name for the great scourge of syphilis. In it, you lay out your theory of its cause, and more importantly, your method of treatment using your carefully prepared mercury compounds. You also take the opportunity to rail against the popular, but in your view, ineffective treatment using the expensive imported wood of the guaiacum tree. You find a printer willing to publish your work. The book appears, and it is a sensation. Your clear, forceful arguments and your claims of successful cures capture the public imagination. But your old enemies are never far behind. The medical faculty at the University of Leipzig, staunchly Galenist, gets wind of your publication. They are outraged. They see your book as a dangerous piece of quackery and a direct attack on their authority. They exert their considerable influence, pressuring the Nuremberg City Council to act. The council, fearing controversy, caves. They ban the sale of your book and halt the printing of your other works. It is Basel all over again. You are censored, silenced. The brief moment of triumph turns to bitter ash. You are forced to leave Nuremberg. Once again a fugitive from the establishment. This experience hardens your resolve, but also deepens your paranoia. You see conspiracies everywhere, a unified front of ignorant doctors and corrupt authorities, aligned against you, and you're not entirely wrong. Your ideas are genuinely threatening to the established order. A common historical fact of the period is the tight control that professional guilds, including medical faculties, held over their respective fields. They could set prices, grant licenses, and ruin the careers of anyone who didn't play by their rules. You were a rogue operator in a closed system, and they were determined to shut you down. It is around this time that your writing takes on an increasingly prophetic and apocalyptic tone. You feel that the world is steeped in corruption, not just in medicine, but in religion and politics as well. You see the bitter conflicts of the Protestant Reformation raging around you, and you are critical of all sides. You attack the Pope, but you also attack Martin Luther with equal venom, calling him a gouty monk who has simply replaced one form of dogma with another. You believe that a great cleansing is coming, a third Reformation that will purify not just the Church, but all of human knowledge. And you, Paracelsus, see yourself as its lonely, misunderstood prophet. You begin to write a series of astrological and theological prognostications. In works like Prognosticatio and Commentary on the Prophecies of the Magi, you interpret celestial signs and biblical passages to predict the future. You forecast wars, plagues, the fall of empires, and the coming of a new age of enlightenment. An obscure and highly controversial aspect of these writings is your apparent prediction of a great northern monarch who would rise up to conquer Rome and establish a new, purified Christian empire. This prophecy would be seized upon by various kings and political figures in the centuries to come, each hoping they were the one you had foreseen. Your prophecies are a strange blend of astrological calculation, biblical exegesis, and sharp political commentary, all filtered through your unique mystical worldview. They are a far cry from your medical treatises, and they further cement your reputation as a wild-eyed visionary, a kind of Nostradamus of the medical world. Historians still debate how to interpret this prophetic turn in your career. Was it a sign of a growing Messiah complex? A descent into megalomania fueled by years of persecution? Or was it a canny political move, an attempt to gain the protection of a powerful patron by appealing to their ambitions? Or perhaps it was simply a natural extension of your cosmological beliefs. If the macrocosm and microcosm are linked, then understanding the future of the world, the macrocosm, is just as important as understanding the future of a disease in a patient, the microcosm. For you, medicine, theology, and prophecy were not separate disciplines. They were all part of the same grand, unified science of reading the book of nature and the book of scripture. You wander on, from St. Gall to Appenzell to the mining valleys of Tyrol. You continue to practice medicine, often for the poor and marginalized, who cannot afford the expensive Galenist physicians. You treat the forgotten, the miners, the peasants, the very people you have always seen as the source of true knowledge. You are living out your own philosophy, a man against the world, sustained by an unshakable belief in your own divine mission. You are no longer just fighting for a new medicine. You are fighting for a new reality, and you are willing to be its first and only citizen, even if it means a life of exile and condemnation. The whole world might be wrong, but you, Theophrastus, Bombastus von Hohenheim, are certain that you are right. After years of relentless wandering, your life takes another unexpected turn. In 1536, your fame, or perhaps your infamy, reaches the ears of a man powerful enough to ignore your legion of detractors. This man is Albrecht, Duke of Prussia, a major figure in the Protestant Reformation and the first secular ruler to establish Lutheranism as a state religion. Albrecht is a man of learning and intellectual curiosity, and he is intrigued by your radical ideas. He invites you to his court in Königsberg. For you, this is a golden opportunity, a chance to find the stability and patronage you have craved for so long. You travel to Prussia, and for a time, you are treated with the respect you feel you deserve. You serve as the Duke's personal physician, and you are given the resources to continue your work. However, the court is a viper's nest of political and religious intrigue. Your presence is immediately a source of tension. The Duke's other advisors, particularly the Orthodox Lutheran theologians, view you with deep suspicion. They see your mystical, nature-based theology as dangerously close to pantheism or heresy. They listen to your talk of elemental spirits and astral influences, and they hear the whispers of magic and paganism. A specific point of contention arises over the Eucharist, the central Christian rite. Theologians were locked in bitter debate over the nature of Christ's presence in the bread and wine. You, never one to shy away from a theological brawl, weigh in with your own, typically strange and alchemical interpretation. You argue that the process is a kind of divine spagyric, where the body of the bread is spiritually transmuted, its essence purified and elevated. This does not sit well with the strict Lutherans, who have their own precise doctrine. They denounce you too. The Duke, accusing you of holding unchristian views. It's the same old story. Your inability to conform, your insistence on interpreting everything through your own unique lens, creates conflict wherever you go. The Duke, a politician as well as a man of faith, cannot afford to alienate his powerful clergy for the sake of one brilliant but troublesome physician. Your time in Königsberg comes to an end. The patronage dissolves, and you are once again on the road. This pattern repeats itself several times in your later years. You find a temporary haven, a brief period of productivity, followed by conflict and exile. You are a man who is brilliant at getting a job and terrible at keeping it. A common historical fact about patronage in the Renaissance is that it was a complex dance of flattery, service, and political maneuvering. You, with your abrasive personality and complete lack of deference, were a terrible dancer. You could not or would not play the game that, after leaving Prussia, you wander through Austria. It is during this final phase of your life that you produce some of your most mature and influential work, including the book that many consider your masterpiece, the Astronomia Magna, or the Great Astronomy. This is not a book about stars in the modern sense. It is your grand synthesis of philosophy, cosmology, and the human condition. It is your attempt to systematize your entire worldview, to explain the intricate web of correspondences that links humanity, nature, and the divine. You write about the two lights that guide humanity, the light of nature, which allows us to understand the physical world through science and experience, and the light of grace, which is a gift from God that grants spiritual wisdom. For you, a true philosopher must be illuminated by both. An obscure but poignant work from this period is your treatise Asterisk on the minor sickness and other minors diseases Asterisk. Here, you return to the subject that first sparked your medical curiosity. As a boy, you draw upon your decades of observation in mining towns across Europe to produce one of the first ever occupational health manuals. You meticulously describe the different lung diseases that afflict miners based on the specific metals they are extracting: lead, mercury, antimony. You diagnose the symptoms of metal poisoning with stunning accuracy. Most importantly, you propose preventative measures, improving ventilation in the mines using protective veils over the mouth, and prescribing specific diets and remedies to counteract the effects of the toxic dust and fumes. It is a work of profound compassion and brilliant practical observation. It is you at your very best, the scientist, the physician, and the advocate. For the common working man, historians still debate the nature of your final years. Some accounts paint you as a broken, impoverished man, defeated by a lifetime of conflict. Others suggest you found a measure of peace, continuing to write and practice medicine on a smaller scale, having accepted your role as an outsider. You travel to Villach, a center for mining and metallurgy, a place where your skills are understood and valued. You are in your element, surrounded by the furnaces and ores that have fascinated you since childhood. Then, in 1541, you receive one last invitation. The Prince Archbishop of Salzburg, Duke Ernst of Bavaria, a man known for his reformist and humanist leanings, invites you to his city. He offers you a position as his physician. It seems like a final chance for a permanent home, a place to live. Out your remaining days in peace and security. Weary of the road, you accept. You travel to Salzburg, a city nestled in the Austrian Alps, a landscape not unlike the one you were born in, bringing your life full circle. You arrive in Salzburg in the spring of 1541. The city is beautiful, a Baroque jewel cradled by mountains, with a fortress looming over it like a stony guardian. Your new patron, Prince Archbishop Ernst, welcomes you. He is a man of intellect, and, unlike your previous patrons, seems unbothered by your controversial reputation. He gives you a house, a stipend, and the freedom to write and practice as you see fit. For the first time in a very long time, you can unpack your few belongings without the nagging fear that you'll have to flee in the middle of the night. You are 47 years old, but you feel much older. The years of wandering, of sleeping in rough taverns and damp cellars, of constant stress and conflict, have taken their toll on your body. You set up a small laboratory and continue your alchemical work. You spend your days writing, trying to organize the chaotic storm of ideas that still rages in your mind. You are working on your Defensions, a series of writings defending your life and your medical philosophy, a final testament for posterity. You know your time is short, and you are racing to set the record straight, to ensure that your enemies do not have the last word. You walk the streets of Salzburg, a strange, solitary figure. The locals whisper as you pass. Is that him? The famous doctor? The magician? The heretic? Your legend has grown so large that it walks ahead of you, a distorted shadow you can never escape. Your health begins to fail. The nature of your final illness is, like so much of your life, a matter of speculation. You have lived a hard life, and your fondness for wine is well documented. It may have simply been a long, slow decline, but the end, when it comes, is sudden. In September of 1541, only a few short months after arriving in Salzburg, you fall gravely ill. You take to your bed, and you know this is the end. You have faced down death in countless patients on battlefields, and in plague houses. Now it has come for you, the final end's day that no medicine can cure. You dictate your last will and testament. It is a humble document for a man of such monumental ego. A common historical fact is that you leave your few possessions, your sword, your clothes, a few books, and the tools of your trade to be distributed among the poor. Ask for a simple burial in the churchyard of St. Sebastian. On September 24th, 1541, you die. You are 48 years old. The story should end here, but with you, nothing is ever that simple. The circumstances of your death immediately become a source of controversy and myth. The official story is that you died of natural causes after a short illness, but rumors begin to fly almost immediately. Your followers, unwilling to believe that their great master could succumb to a simple sickness, whisper of foul play. They claim your old enemies, the physicians and apothecaries you had humiliated and enraged throughout your life, had finally caught up with you. The story goes that they hired thugs to ambush you, either pushing you from a high place or bludgeoning you, causing injuries that led to your death a few days later. They say you were murdered. This theory gains a surprising amount of traction. Decades later, when your remains are exhumed to be moved to a more prominent tomb within the church, the skull is examined. It is reported to have a fracture or an indentation, which your supporters seize upon as proof of a violent end. An obscure but persistent legend claims that the assassins cornered you in a tavern and, after a struggle, threw you down a steep flight of stone stairs. The story transforms your death from a quiet fading into a dramatic, final confrontation, a martyrdom for the cause of a new science. So which is true? Did you die peacefully in your bed? Or were you the victim of a conspiracy? Historians still debate the cause of your death. Modern examinations of the skull have been inconclusive. Some analyzers suggest the fracture is a post-mortem artifact, a result of the bones settling or being damaged during the exhumation. Others maintain it is consistent with a blow to the head. There is no definitive proof either way. The murder theory, while dramatic, lacks any contemporary evidence. No one was ever accused, and the official records are silent. It's more likely that the legend arose from the passions you inspired. Your followers needed you to be a martyr, and your enemies were certainly hateful enough to be cast as murderers. Your death, like your life, became a text to be interpreted, a battleground for your legacy. Whether you died from a lingering illness or a sudden act of violence, the result was the same. The most disruptive, brilliant, and infuriating voice in 16th century medicine was silenced. The tempest was over. You are buried, as you requested, at St. Sebastian in Salzburg. A simple grave for a man whose ideas were anything but. But your story was not over. In death, you would become even more powerful, more influential than you ever were in your turbulent, wandering life. The real Paracelsian revolution was just beginning. In the years and decades following your death, a strange thing happens. The man, Theophrastus von Hohenheim, begins to fade, replaced by the legend, Paracelsus. Freed from the difficult reality of your abrasive personality, your ideas can finally flourish. Your followers, the loyal and the opportunistic alike, begin the monumental task of publishing your work. The printing presses of Europe, which had so often been closed to you in life, now begin to churn out your treatises. A flood of Paracelsian literature pours forth, covering medicine, alchemy, theology, and prophecy. Your name becomes a byword for a new, revolutionary way of thinking. The medical world is split in two. The Paracelsian Wars that began during your lifetime now escalate into a full-blown intellectual conflict that rages for over a century. On one side are the staunch Galenists, defenders of the classical tradition, based in the conservative universities like Paris and Leipzig. They see your work as dangerous, magical nonsense, and your chemical remedies as poisons. They fight, too. Maintain the status quo to protect their authority and their methods. On the other side are the iatrochemists, the followers of your chemical medicine. They are a diverse group. University professors in more progressive schools, court physicians, to adventurous nobles and independent alchemists and practitioners. They champion your use of mineral remedies, your theory of the tria prima, and your belief that alchemy is the true foundation of medicine. This is not just an academic squabble. It has real-world consequences, influencing how patients are treated. In courts and cities across Europe, a wealthy nobleman suffering from melancholy might have a choice between two physicians. A Galenist who prescribes a change in diet and a mild herbal concoction to balance his humors, and a Paracelsian who offers him a dose of aurum potabile, your drinkable gold, to strengthen his heart and spirit. The choice a patient made could be a matter of life and death. A common historical fact is that this conflict was particularly fierce in France, where the medical faculty of Paris was a powerful bastion of Galenism, leading to decades of heated public debates and pamphlet wars against the upstart eccentric. Your influence extends far beyond medicine. Alchemists across Europe adopt your tria prima sulfur, mercury, and salt as a new and more profound framework for their work. They are drawn to your vision of alchemy as a spiritual art, a path to understanding the secrets of both God and nature. You become a foundational figure in the Western esoteric tradition. Groups like the Rosicrucians, a mysterious spiritual movement that emerged in the early 17th century, claim you as one of their primary inspirations. Their manifestos, which call for a universal reformation of mankind, are filled with Paracelsian language about the microcosm, the book of nature, and the healing power of alchemy. In obscure but significant way your influence spread was through the books of secrets that became popular in the late 16th and 17th centuries. These were practical handbooks for the home, filled with recipes for everything from medicines and cosmetics to metallurgical techniques and agricultural tips. Many of these books were heavily infused with simplified Paracelsian ideas, translating your complex spagyric theories into practical recipes for creating chemical remedies. This is how your ideas trickled down from the high-minded debates of academics to the everyday life of artisans and householders. It's how iatrochemistry went mainstream, even if people didn't know its source. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we joked about in another story? Your followers would have probably tried to distill its arcanum to make a more potent, if not better smelling, version. However, your legacy is complicated. As your fame grows, your thought is often simplified and distorted. The Paracelsianism practiced by many of your followers is a caricature of your actual work. Some focus only on the chemical remedies, ignoring the deep spiritual and philosophical context. They become the soot-scratchers you so despised, using your name to sell their own chemical concoctions. Others focus only on the most fantastical elements of your work, the prophecies, the elemental spirits turning you into a kind of wizard or sorcerer. The nuanced, difficult, and often contradictory genius of your actual writings gets lost in the noise. Historians still debate the extent to which you can be called a father of modern science. On the one hand, you were a mystic who believed in gnomes and astral influences. Your methods were not always rigorous, and your arrogance was legendary. On the other hand, your contributions are undeniable. Your insistence on observation and experience over blind adherence to ancient texts was a crucial step toward the scientific method. Your concept of diseases as specific external agents was a direct precursor to germ theory. Your pioneering work in chemical medicine and your fundamental principle of toxicology, the dose makes the poison, laid the foundations for modern pharmacology. You were a bridge, a transitional figure standing with one foot in the magical, medieval world, and the other stepping tentatively into the new world of empirical science. You were not a modern scientist, but modern science would look very different without you. You were the chaotic, explosive force that was necessary to shatter the old certainties and clear the ground for something new to grow. Centuries pass. The fires of the alchemical furnaces die down, replaced by the cool, clean light of modern laboratories. The fierce debates between Galenists and Paracelsians fade into the footnotes of medical history books. The world you knew, a world enchanted with elemental spirits and astral influences, gives way to one of atoms, molecules, and biological processes. And yet your ghost lingers. Your influence, it turns out, is as potent and difficult to categorize as one of your own alchemical remedies. Your most direct and lasting contribution is in the field you essentially created, toxicology. The principle that the dose makes the poison remains the single most fundamental concept in the field. Every pharmacologist who determines the therapeutic window of a new drug, every environmental scientist who sets safe exposure limits for a chemical, is, whether they know it or not, walking in your footsteps. You were the first to systematically articulate that toxicity is not an absolute quality of a substance, but a relative one dependent on quantity. It's a truth so foundational that it's easy to forget someone had to discover it. In chemistry, your legacy is also tangible. While you were no Robert Boyle, your relentless focus on using chemical techniques, distillation, precipitation, crystallization for practical ends, helped elevate chemistry from a mystical pursuit to a practical science, a common historical. Fact is that many early members of the Royal Society in London, the cradle of the scientific revolution, were deeply interested in alchemy and iatrochemistry. They read your work and built upon your experimental foundations, even as they shed your mystical cosmology. You also have a claim to being the first European to identify zinc as a distinct metal, which you called zincum. It's a small but concrete contribution to the periodic table, but perhaps your most profound and surprising resurgence comes in the 20th century, in a field you could never have imagined, psychology. The great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung, in his exploration of the human unconscious, found himself drawn to the strange, symbolic world of alchemy. He saw in the alchemical process a transformation of base matter into gold, a powerful metaphor for his own process of individuation, the journey of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the self to become a whole person. And in his studies, Jung recognized you, Paracelsus, as a pivotal figure. He saw you as a man grappling with the archetypes of the collective unconscious, expressing profound psychological truths through the symbolic language of alchemy. An obscure fact is that Jung devoted an entire volume of his collected works to analyzing your writings, seeing in your trier prima of mercury, sulfur, and salt a symbolic representation of the spirit, soul, and body, a model of the human psyche. For Jung, you are not just an early chemist. You were a pioneering psychologist of the depths, exploring the soul with a crucible instead of a couch. Historians still debate your ultimate classification. Were you the last of the great mages, or the first of the new scientists? Were you a devout Christian reformer, or a pantheistic nature worshipper? A charlatan or a genius? The answer to all these questions is most likely yes. You were a man of profound contradictions, because you lived in an age of profound contradictions. You embodied the tumultuous transition from the medieval to the modern world. You were a force of creative destruction, a necessary chaos agent. Your Paracelsian revolution was not a neat and tidy affair. It was messy, loud, and often destructive, but it shattered a stagnant intellectual orthodoxy and opened up a universe of new possibilities. Your true legacy is not any single discovery or theory. It is the spirit of relentless inquiry, the defiant, courage to trust your own eyes over the received wisdom of the ages. It is the revolutionary idea that the answers to the greatest mysteries are not locked away in ancient books, but are waiting to be discovered in the world around us and within. You as in the heart of a star, the vein of a mineral, and the soul of a human being. You were a wanderer your entire life, never finding a true home. But you carved out a space in history that is entirely your own. A strange and wonderful laboratory of the mind where science, magic, and faith were not enemies, but partners in the great work of understanding it all. And as the story of your life comes to a close, the echoes of your passage fade into a gentle quiet. The fiery glow of the Athanor softens, its constant hum a soothing drone in the stillness of the night. The sharp smell of sulfur and acid mellows, replaced by the cool, clean scent of the evening air drifting through an open window. The cluttered laboratory, once a stage for cosmic battles and intellectual revolutions, now seems peaceful, its secrets sleeping in their glass vials and on the yellowed pages of your manuscripts. Your restless spirit, which roamed the breadth of Europe and the vast landscapes of the imagination, has finally found its rest. The arguments and the accolades, the condemnations and the praise, all melt away into the silence. What remains is the profound stillness of a completed work, the quiet satisfaction of a life poured out in a relentless quest for truth. The great, bombastic noise of your existence has softened into a whisper, a gentle reminder that even the most turbulent storms eventually give way to a calm and peaceful night. And now, it is time for your own mind to find its quiet harbor, to let go of the day's struggles and drift into the gentle currents of sleep, leaving the grand questions of the cosmos for another time. The world will continue its slow, inexorable turning without your help for a few hours. Let it.